Welcome, everyone. It is Friday, July 24th. I think this is, wait, no, I got to send you live. Let's see if that
There we go.
works. There we go. Okay. Oh, man, I still haven't made a perfect transition between the software yet. I was like, yes, this is the first time that I actually, I did the transitions of the slides perfectly, but there's some nuances to live streaming broadcasting software that I have not known or did not even know how to use up until recently. Hey Ben, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Doing well. Thank you for joining the show today for this edition, episode number 7 of BizPod.Ninja. You're in New York?
Yeah, based in Soho.
Nice. How's it there these days? I'm in Los Angeles, and we got another order last week from the governor of like things were opening and they're shutting down. It looks like California is the hotbed, but you guys seem to be managing stuff.
Yeah, I don't know how, but yeah, it seems like, you go outside and it feels much more alive, not fully alive. Actually, on the weekends, it seems like everyone suddenly feels really comfortable to go outside, but during the week, not so much. But kind of a couple weeks ago, I thought there's no way that we don't see a spike, but it seems like so far we're in the clear and they're continuing with the reopening. So yeah, we're really happy about that.
How have you been holding up personally? I mean, obviously, I know
Uh,
you're working around the clock, but like, still, just how are you keeping sane?
Yeah, for me and our team, it's been relatively it hasn't been too different. Obviously, there was really low energy a couple months ago, and it was very weird.
Yeah.
And we all kind of stayed in the city the entire time. And for a lot of what we do requires like lab and our lab work, so we kind of had
All right.
to work through it basically. But it's been all positive, and luckily enough, I don't have any. I don't know anyone who has gotten it or gotten really sick. But obviously, feel for everyone who has had negative stuff happen to them.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyhow, quick introduction. Let me get to the meat and potatoes of the show, or should I say the plant-based meat and potatoes of the show, given Ben Pasternak is 20 years old and well known for being the youngest tech entrepreneur to receive VC funding from Silicon Valley when he was just 15. After his first company, Monkey, was acquired in 2017, Ben turned his attention to the nutrition space, launching Nuggs. Disclaimer, I'm also an investor in Nuggs via my VC fund, West Quad Ventures. Nuggs is a chicken nugget simulation, so to speak. That's and we'll get into it, but you'll see the marketing is just amazing. Nuggs raised $11 million in funding, led by McCain Foods. So there we are. Thanks for coming on the show. I think a lot of folks are probably interested, and I certainly am interested, and I know part of your story. But now that I have you here on the show here, I would like to get a little bit deeper in how did you know you were destined to be an entrepreneur at such an early age? Being 15 years old to get venture capital funding in Silicon Valley, that's a feat. Tell me about your path, a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't even really a decision. I kind of just, for as long as I can remember, I've been doing entrepreneurial things.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I used to, jailbreak my iPhone and, play with the technology when I was probably like 8 to 10 or something. And then I started a YouTube channel, kind of talking about different technology and mostly about Apple products. And I found out that, given the time zone difference, Sydney, I'm originally from Sydney. We would get all the latest Apple products by 14 hours ahead, just because of the time zone difference. So I'd wait in line, like camp out the Apple stores, and be first to get them. And I'd end up making a video about them and sending it to all kind of like the Apple blogs and like small tech press. So by the time
What was
yeah,
your favorite Apple launch that you can recall during this time? Like, what was your favorite product that you like stood and waited for or talked about?
yeah, I had a lot of really positive things with my favorite like experience was with one of the iPads, like one of the early iPads, just because there was so much excitement about it.
Yeah.
And my most viral video was about like the iMac, and it yeah, it was my first, I used to get like a couple thousand views, but that was the first video I made that got millions of views. And
Wow.
it was, my subscribers were going up, and it was
How
the
old
first
were
time I went
you?
viral. I was probably 12. Yeah,
So
12.
12. So you had
Um,
millions of views as a 12-year-old
yeah,
hacking Apple products. Awesome.
yeah. So I got really hooked on virality, and I knew I wanted to get into building apps. And I ended up, I started trying to build this app called One, which was going to unify all your social networks into one app. Um, and then during that time, at some point, I was ended up building this game called Impossible Rush, which was like a very basic, addicting game. And this was when I was 14. And
Yeah.
it was the first app, I literally just built it for fun. It was no kind of like business intent. And I built it with a friend. And, we ended up launching it. And within basically a couple of days, it was #1 on the App Store in every country in the world. And
Holy
from
smokes.
there,
Was
yeah,
it a
that was crazy.
freemium or was it a paid for app, like a game?
No, it was literally all free, and there was some ads in it. But from that, I was a really bad student because I was always focused on YouTube or apps or whatever it was. And this was my first, I guess, confirmation that I had either I got really lucky, I had some knowledge of what I was doing. And it kind of initially got some like local press, like, around
Yeah.
my suburb. And then eventually it blew up to, international press and Forbes. And at the time it was like Mashable and Business Insider.
Yeah.
And finally I was kind of like off the hook. Like it was, my teachers and my parents like lost a
Wait,
little control, I guess.
what grade were you in at this time, or
This was probably eighth grade.
8th grade? So your
Yeah.
teachers and your parents were probably like, what the heck is going on here? And then they saw you in the press and everything that you're doing, and they're like, okay, maybe he's on to something.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
can imagine
People
your parents
were,
being on your back. They would be on my back for sure.
oh
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah, they were totally on my back, and both my parents are like college educated, and like the 100% had the like predestined plan of going to university, and I don't know, getting an MBA or something. So, what was to come, they had no idea. But essentially, they kind of gave me a break, or it wasn't even a break. It was just like they're like, okay, this is a lost cause. He can do what he wants, etc. So they're much more open-minded to this sort of stuff. And then I was lucky enough that this guy who is actually a film director, but was building apps at the time, saw some of my work and reached out,
Yep.
and basically, told me he'd help me raise venture capital money, which, I had a lot of people reaching out to me at the time. So I initially blew him off multiple times, and he consistently reached out, and then eventually convinced me that, it was legitimate. And he introduced me to a VC by the name of Jonathan Teo, and Jonathan Teo agreed to give me a couple $100,000 if I dropped out of school and moved to the US. So I ended up moving to New York City alone at 15. And to be fair, my parents were open-minded to me doing this stuff, but moving to New York alone wasn't a part of the plan. But
Yeah.
a few tantrums later, I got through. Uh, and I kid you not, literally a few tantrums later, I got through.
So quick question. So when you move at
Yeah,
15, how does that work? Like,
yeah,
do
it
you
was
just
crazy.
did you go try to get an apartment? Like, hey, I'm 15. I'm from, I just moved here. I'm gonna be starting a company. Will you rent a place to me? Wouldn't they be like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, well, it was so crazy that there's so many like legalities, and in retrospect, it was almost suddenly illegal. Like I'm pretty sure there's a law in the U.S. that you have to be in school till age 16. But
Yeah.
my mom came to the U.S. with me, and
Okay.
like you were saying, the
Oh, so
all
you were
the
completely on your own.
oh, she dropped me in the U.S. And helped me.
Okay.
So when I tried to lease a place, uh, no one had credit. I certainly didn't have any credit. So
Right.
the landlord said, you have to pay the entire thing up front. Paid from the VC money, I got paid the thing up front.
Yeah.
And it was so complicated that I couldn't even open a bank account. Like you can't when you're international, and because I'm not a citizen or anything. You couldn't even open a bank account, so it was pretty complex. And it was lots of like, oh, the mentor who kind of helped me, like it was all in his name at the start, and there's a whole thing. And there'd be times where it would be like, I'd charge something to my card, and it would be marked as suspicious, and like since it wasn't in my name, I'd have to wait like 48 hours so that Chris, my mentor, could unlock it. It was a whole nightmare, but it was fun. It was very like home alone, and I was very responsible. I didn't like I didn't know anyone. So there was nothing, there's no trouble to
Yeah.
be done. And that was all I wanted to do anyway. So that's how I ended up in the US. And then I ended up, working on a couple projects. And the one that really took off was this social networking app called Monkey, which was
Right.
basically a peer-to-peer video chat app for teenagers to meet over like-minded interests. And yeah, it just ended up blowing up. It grew to 20 million users in a year. And unlike the game I made, this had like longevity to it. Like people used it a lot, and it had a brand, and it quickly, any teenager knows what it is.
Right.
But the issues were that it was kind of like like chat roulette or Omegle with much better moderation. So you
Got
could
it.
fix nudity really easily. You could do like
Yep.
front end moderation on the device, which was a new technology at the time, and that worked really well. But people were really mean to each other. Like when you put a bunch of teenagers in a room, people are mean,
Right.
and that's what happened. So we quickly realized that, and we didn't want to violate users' privacy and like moderate their calls and transcribe them and all that
Right.
stuff. So we ended up selling it to the kind of the number two, the company that was behind us, and got out of that. And yeah, ended up kind of reassessing my motivations and what I wanted to be working on, which led to Simulate and Nugs.
Amazing. Amazing. We'll get into Nugs in a second. But before we do, one question I have, what's the biggest learning lesson from your previous ventures, and how is that reflected in Simulator or Nugs? What is that core piece of Business Ninja truths and wisdoms that you can share with folks who are either watching now or listening later?
Yeah, it's not necessarily I don't know how adaptable the advice is, but the few things that I learned, one was that there's a few things. One, I was 17 for the majority of the time I was working on Monkey, so
Yep.
it's really hard to get team members to take you seriously. And honestly, rightfully so. I think that I was immature, they were immature. It was a complex situation. So the thing I really learned was like how to. I feel like the difference between Simulator and Nugs and Monkey was that now I know how to manage people and work with people,
Yeah.
which is
How big
obviously
was the
super.
team at Monkey?
I think at peak it was 6 or 7. It was pretty small,
Got
but
it.
it was really hard to. Yeah, I really struggled with it. And the other thing was that you know, I had to learn how to. I guess when I was younger, it was much harder, but how to deal with the emotions of startups, where it was you kind of learn over time that the ups are temporary, the downs are temporary, and just to kind of stay consistent through it all. Like it's not worth going on manic highs, it's not going on depressive lows. You just
Yep.
want to
Yep.
stay as consistent as you can. So really kind of learn how to get my emotions in check, because so much of this stuff is kind of like a psychological test, right? It's how much you can handle, and it's how much you can personally grow. Because ultimately, I think that a lot of it is the company's success is a reflection on how quickly you're growing, how quickly the company's growing, and it's all
Right.
kind of one entity.
Right. Right. Interesting. No, that's super insightful. I think people management, people forget how important that is. And at the end of the day, a startup and a founder is managing people, especially at the genesis, at the beginning. Nothing, if you don't have a business model or a working, a market kind of a market leading product that's already kind of humming at its own tune. It's literally about people management. So you're really fortunate to learn all these lessons at such a young age, because there are folks that I know who are well in their 40s and 50s who still don't know how to manage people. So
Right. Yeah.
that's a big learning lesson for Simulate and Nugs. So let's talk about it. You raised a recent round, a round that I was also a part of. Tell us about the recent round that you raised. Tell us about Nugs, the future. What is Nugs for those folks who are tuning in now? I've found in the past several months, a bunch of my colleagues are now using or buying Nugs and having them delivered. But there's probably some folks that don't know what Nugs are. So, what are Nugs? Tell me about the company and the recent round.
Yeah, sure. So Nugs is kind of a product under our company Simulate, and Nugs in particular is a chicken nugget simulation. And the company kind of has two core pillars. The first one that's most important is it's a kind of nutrition company that operates with a software framework, which really comes down to kind of two buckets. One is, our products are always iterating. We're always iterating on them and making them better, the same way that, an app on your iPhone is constantly being updated. So I think that, all technology should constantly be improving. And for a long time, nutrition hasn't improved, right? We've made it bigger and produced more food, but we haven't actually improved the nutrition itself. So I suppose, always improving. And the second one is highly scalable. So what I loved about building software is, you can write a couple lines of code and it's instantly accessible to anyone with an internet connection. So, when we build products, obviously it's not as simple as building software in the sense that, it's scalable, but we think, we don't want to just build like some fancy technology in a lab. We want to build technology that's can be accessed by hundreds of millions of people and eventually billions of people. So thinking with that framework. And the second element is something that wasn't at the start of the company we didn't necessarily know, but we quickly found that simulating highly processed meat is much easier than simulating less processed meat. So our thinking is, you focused on like chicken nuggets and hot dogs, etc. Right. You can simulate them quite easily relative to other products, and we can build businesses around those products and use that money to fund the R&D that goes into simulating the actual animal itself. So it's kind of starting, you start with the highly processed meats, and then you could go to something like a chicken tender that's more fibrous and more muscle-like until, again, you actually simulate the animal itself. So that's kind of the core company principles. And Nuggs has been around a year and it's just really blown up, which has resulted in this new funding, which has been really cool. And it's you kind of like you guys, obviously, McCain, Leia Hippo, Alexis Ohanian, and a bunch of other really cool people. And we're feeling good and appreciative that during this kind of crazy time.
You also had the
really
CEO, the former CEO of Whole Foods.
As well. Walter Robb.
How did, just for folks who are listening, did you have a relationship with him previously, or were you introduced?
No, he came through one of our other investors. And we were introduced to him, and he ended up investing.
That's great. Tell me, how are you classifying? I think before we had invested, I had tried Nuggs 2.0. I think you were at Nuggs 1.6 or 1.7, the commercial product. And then when you guys sent me the test run of 2.0 before it was commercially available, I was blown away. I did a blind taste test with several folks who I didn't even tell them that it was plant-based chicken nugget. And everyone's like, "This is really good." I'm like, would you buy this? Do you like this? They're like, "Yeah, this is great." And then they could see a smirk on my face, realizing that something was up. They're like, "Is this not real chicken?" I'm like, bingo. That's when I decided to text you and say, I'm in. It's interesting, that classifier. How are you breaking the classification of when you think of like iteration, design, and engineering as you do in software development, that iteration? How are you saying, what is the classifier between different iterations, like 1.6, 1.7? How did you go to 2.0? And how does that classifier look for the future?
In general, like R&D is very, it's kind of like looking for a needle in a haystack, at least in our experience, where oftentimes you don't know what you're about to hit. It can feel like you're a million miles away from something that you're actually, a couple feet away. So we found that, as we iterate, sometimes the learnings can be, somewhat small, and we're still better. And we release them in, a 0.1 or a 0.2 or a 0.3. But every now and then we make a really big discovery. And that's kind of what led to 2.0, which, honestly, the technology that we use in 2.0, we haven't even really publicly talked about, where, a lot of it's kind of confidential and we're figuring out the correct way to protect it. But it's constantly evolving. And then we use customer feedback to point us in the right direction on variables. So, for example, different flavoring, we gather a ton of data about, whether people think it's too salty or not salty, or, is this chicken-like, is it not chicken-like? And there's I think there's 52 variables or something that we experiment with, and using, being a D2C company currently, and having all that data enables us to iterate really quickly and make a product that people love. And the response to 2.0 has been, way above what I expected. It's just been really, really positive, and it kind of feels like the first time in the company's history where, we've always had people that like the product, but people like really, really like the product and are obsessed with it. So it's been super motivating for all of us.
Yep. Yep. Great. Thank you for that. We've got about 5 minutes left for the remainder of our live cast show. Best piece of advice to a young entrepreneur you can give.
Yeah.
And that probably advice is probably to anyone, actually, because there are still some folks in their late 30s, mid 30s, late 40s, even 50s who've been talking about jumping off or becoming an entrepreneur for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. And you seem to have cracked some sort of code early on. So what would be that piece of advice to give, I guess, a young person? Because there is a little bit of a bigger barrier, I would say, than somebody who's older. And then what would be your general advice for folks across the board?
Yeah, I have literally, it's funny because nothing comes to mind because there's so many learnings, but I think that, my personal belief, and I know it's kind of controversial in Silicon Valley these days, but you really kind of have to sacrifice everything. Otherwise the goal becomes the sacrifice. And that's kind of the principle I've lived by. And even one of our company's values is kind of like obsession. You just have to really, really, if my brain was dissected as a computer and you looked at the activities they were running, it's 95% work related. And not because, it's not unpleasant or something. It's not, it's certainly times that are unpleasant, but the reason I do it is because I really enjoy it. And I think that it's a really fun game to play. And you have to, if you're not into the game, you won't have, if you don't love what you do, you won't be able to succeed in it. Right. So right. You just got to ensure that your motivations are aligned, and that it's not, you're not forcing yourself to do something, but you're doing it because you really believe in it. And I think that was the difference between Monkey and Simulate. Monkey, I was playing, I was too into the game, but there was no long-term vision. Where with what I'm doing now, I could see myself working on it for the rest of my life. And as a result, it just becomes a lot easier to win.
Awesome. I love that. Couple of fun questions. Besides eating Nugs, of course, what else are you eating during the pandemic?
I eat a lot of weird market vegetables and stuff. So there's a restaurant called Westville that I get a lot of different vegetables delivered. So sometimes all I eat for dinner is vegetables. But what about you?
It's been across the board. Bianca has been making some Persian dishes, Italian dishes. I mean, we do a lot of sous vide. I think we did I'm increasingly going more plant-based, but being half Greek, half Brazilian, there's a big meat culture as well. So slowly whittling that down, but generally more plant-based. But yeah, a lot of vegetables, just because it's really hard to be out and active. If I typically had the normal food as, pre-COVID, I might just be like hazy and like tired for like several hours during the middle of a workday, which would never happen. So, of course, I've been having, and so when I ordered, actually, I think, was it 5 pounds? I ordered the largest version of Nugs 2.0 too. So when I need a little snack, but I don't want to overeat, I've been munching on Nugs 2.0 as well.
That's good.
Anything that you've had? I know that you're 95% working on Nugs, but what else are you watching? Anything interesting on Netflix? Just anything that you've seen that's been interesting for folks to know? Any cool new? I feel like I've pretty much run out of everything, personally.
Yeah, I honestly I haven't really I don't actually have a Netflix account, which is very controversial. And I don't watch much TV. The only TV I watch is I've watched Planet Earth season 2 repeatedly for 2 years. But it literally just explores like different and Blue Ocean, which is the same production company. Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. So I think it's kind of like nature porn. I find it kind of, especially being in New York City where we have minimal nature, and coming from Australia, I can find it realigning to just see different weird creations that that are part of nature's code base.
Awesome. And I'm just curious, what apps? What are your couple favorite apps, or what new apps should I be paying attention to?
Yeah. There's no apps that come to mind, but one thing that's app enabled, I recently got a 8 sleep mattress, which basically, it kind of tracks a bunch of metrics, and you can change the temperature. And what I found is, yeah, it's a really good piece of technology, and it really, optimizing for sleep is so obvious because one, you sleep a third of your life. So, let's improve that. And two, that third of your life directly reflects the other 2/3 of your life. So I
That's
think
right.
that in general, sleeping is really good. And with apps, it links up to an app and I can track all my different sleeping metrics. And it just enables me to operate more efficiently.
I was looking at an 8 sleep as well, but I've always been a chili pad user just because I love
Nice.
the chili pad cube, and they came out with a new one called the Uller, which is also app enabled. I can set it as low, I think, to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It's cold circulated water. I think the 8 mattress also has that embedded. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles of all the data and analysis of sleep, but I've kind of hacked together a solution that gives me some of those metrics. But totally agree with you.
Nice.
You got to have. I always say you have to have an amazing mattress and a desk and chair. Like no price, because
Totally.
that's where you're spending 2/3 of your life.
100%. 100%. Yeah, fully agree.
Amazing having you on the show, Ben. Everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. Ben, especially thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to discuss with us on the show on bizpod.ninja, the learnings, truths, and wisdoms from the trenches. You are a real business ninja, and I hope to see, and of course I know it will come, all the great things that are happening with Simulate and Nuggs and yourself. Thank you so much.
For sure, yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.